Snow fell like quiet confessions over the small industrial estate, the kind that made streetlights glow softer and worries feel heavier. Christmas night had emptied the city of its noise, leaving only the hum of distant traffic and the ache of people who wished things were different. The warehouse office was still lit, one square of yellow against the dark, because Amelia Hart didn't know how to stop working when stopping meant thinking. She was a single mum, a temporary contracts coordinator for a logistics firm that never slept. Christmas bonuses went to people with titles, Christmas shifts went to people like her. She sat at her desk, coat still on, fingers numb as she reconciled numbers that didn't quite add up, the radiator clicking like it was laughing at her. The door creaked. Amelia looked up, startled. Her boss stood there, tall and unsmiling, a man who wore poverty like a tailored suit. Mr. Rowan Hale had built his reputation on thrift and discipline. People whispered he'd once counted paper clips. He rarely stayed late, never smiled much, and spoke as if every word cost him interest. Behind him, half hidden by the doorframe, was a boy with red ears and a woolen hat pulled too low. He couldn't have been more than 7. His boots were too big. His coat had seen better winters. Before Amelia could speak, the boy tugged Mr. Hale's sleeve with the solemn urgency of someone carrying a message far too important for his small chest. "Sir," the boy said, voice thin but steady, "can you tell Santa we moved?" The sentence landed between them like a dropped ornament, fragile and shining. Mr. Hale frowned, confused. "What?" The boy looked up at him, eyes earnest, unafraid. "Our old chimney's gone. Mum says Santa needs the address, or he'll go to the wrong place. We moved last week." Amelia stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "Elliot," she whispered, a tremor in her voice, "you shouldn't." "I waited," the boy said, turning to her. "You said Santa listens to buses." Mr. Hale's gaze shifted from the boy to Amelia, something flickering behind his sternness. "You brought your son to work." "I had no choice," Amelia said, heat rushing to her face. "Childcare cancelled. It's Christmas." I'm sorry." Mr. Hale didn't reply. He knelt instead, slowly, as if his knees weren't used to compromise. At eye level, he studied the boy's face. "And where did you move to, son?" Elliot beamed, relieved. "A room above Mrs. Klein's shop. It smells like soap. There's no chimney, but there's a window. Mum says Santa's clever." Mr. Hale nodded, absorbing this as though it were a balance sheet with invisible figures. "What's the address?" Elliot recited it carefully, stumbling once, correcting himself. He reached into his pocket and produced a crumpled scrap of paper. "I wrote it too. In case." Mr. Hale took the paper. His fingers were long and precise. For a moment, he didn't speak. "I'll make sure Santa knows," he said finally. Elliot smiled, the kind of smile that believes promises are unbreakable. He scampered back to Amelia's side, satisfied. Mr. Hale rose. His eyes lingered on Amelia now, sharper, quieter. "Why are you still here?" "End-of-day reconciliation," she said. "It's overdue." "Go home," he said. "It's Christmas. I can't afford to miss." "I'll handle it," he interrupted, already loosening his coat. "Take your son." Amelia hesitated. Pride wrestled with exhaustion. "Thank you," she said, unsure what else belonged in that space. Outside, the snow had thickened. Amelia wrapped Elliot tighter as they walked toward the bus stop, her breath fogging with questions she didn't dare ask. Elliot hummed a carol, confident the world had shifted just enough. Back in the office, Mr. Hale sat at Amelia's desk. The numbers blurred. He unfolded the scrap of paper again, reading the address as if it were a letter addressed to him alone. He reached for his phone, stopped, then stood and looked out the window at the quiet street, the snow, the way the city held its breath. He locked the office, stepped into the cold, and didn't head for his car. An hour later, Amelia and Elliot climbed the narrow stairs above Mrs. Klein's shop. The room was small but clean, the window rhymed with frost. Amelia set the kettle on the hot plate, trying to make the space feel like a home. Elliot pressed his nose to the glass. "Mum," he whispered, "do you think Santa really knows?" She swallowed. "I hope so, love." There was a knock at the door. 3 soft taps, careful, as if whoever stood outside didn't want to disturb the fragile peace inside. Amelia's heart jumped. No one ever visited. She opened the door a crack. Mr. Rowan Hale stood in the corridor, snow clinging to his coat, his expression unreadable. In one hand, He held a paper bag. In the other, a small, carefully wrapped box. I realized, he said quietly, that Santa might need help finding the window. Elliot gasped. You told him? Mr. Hale knelt again, this time without hesitation. I did, he said. And he asked me to make sure you had a light. He set the paper bag down and took out a string of warm white fairy lights, battery-powered. He fixed them along the window frame with surprising gentleness, the room filling with a soft glow that chased the cold back into the corners. Amelia stood frozen, shame and gratitude tangling in her chest. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said, and the words seemed to cost him something. He handed Elliot the small box. This is from Santa, he said, moving his hard, but brave. Elliot took it reverently, waiting for permission with his eyes. Amelia nodded, tears blurring her vision. Inside the box was a wooden train, simple and solid, the kind built to last. Elliot laughed, the sound bright enough to crack the quiet. Mr. Hale cleared his throat. There's more, he said, turning to Amelia. He reached into his coat and placed an envelope on the table. It's not charity. It's an advance. And a permanent contract. Effective immediately. Her knees weakened. I don't. You do, he said gently. I checked the books. We do better when we stop pretending people are numbers. Silence settled, thick and sacred. Down the corridor, someone sang faintly. The city exhaled. Mr. Hale moved toward the door, then paused. May I? He asked, gesturing to the kettle. Amelia nodded, finding her voice at last. Tea. He smiled, just barely, if it's not too much trouble. They sat at the small table, steam rising between them, the fairy lights humming softly. Outside, snow kept falling, generous and unafraid. Mr. Hale watched Elliot push the train along the edge of the table, his laughter stitching something closed inside a man who had forgotten how to mend. He folded his hands, staring at the glow in the window, and thought of all the addresses he'd never learned, all the chimneys he'd ignored. Somewhere, a bell rang. And for the first time in years, Rowan Hale stayed, listening, as the night decided not to be lonely after all. Rowan Hale didn't rush to leave. The tea cooled in his hands while Elliot narrated the heroic journey of the wooden train across imaginary mountains made from folded napkins. Amelia watched the two of them from the sink, pretending to wash a mug that was already clean, afraid that if she blinked too long the moment might dissolve. You know, Rowan said quietly, I used to build trains like that. Elliot's eyes widened. Really? Did Santa give you one too? Rowan's mouth curved, almost a smile. No. My father did. Before he left. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Amelia turned, surprised, but didn't interrupt. She sensed this wasn't a confession meant for her ears, yet somehow it needed witnesses. My mum worked nights, Rowan continued, staring at the table. Factories, warehouses. Places like this one. I learned early not to ask for things. Asking meant hoping, and hoping hurt. Elliot rolled the train closer to Rowan. This one doesn't break, he said confidently. See? It's strong. Rowan took the train, testing its weight, the smoothness of its wheels. Yes, he murmured. It is. Outside, footsteps echoed on the stairs, customers below, last-minute shoppers, life continuing in its messy, ordinary way. Amelia dried her hands and sat opposite Rowan, folding them together to keep them steady. Thank you, she said again, softer this time. For staying. For everything. He nodded but didn't meet her eyes. I didn't plan to, he admitted. I only meant to drop off the lights. Then I realized I didn't want to go back to an empty house. The honesty startled them both. Rowan looked up sharply, as if bracing for judgment. Amelia didn't offer pity. She simply said, It's hard, being alone on nights like this. Yes, he agreed. It is. Elliot yawned, his bravado fading into sleepiness. Amelia lifted him gently, settling him on the narrow bed by the window. The fairy lights reflected in the glass, doubling their warmth. Will Santa still come if I'm asleep? Elliot murmured. Rowan answered before Amelia could. He prefers it that way. Says surprises work best when you trust. Elliot smiled and drifted off, clutching the train. The room felt smaller with the child asleep, as if the air itself had leaned in to protect him. Rowan stood, straightening his coat. I should go, he said, though he made no move toward the door. Amelia hesitated, then spoke. You don't have to.
Not yet.
The buses will be slow anyway. Rowan glanced at his watch, then slipped it back into his pocket.
Tea, then, he said. One more. They talked in low voices, about small things at first.
The shop below, the snow, the strange way cities went quiet when everyone finally allowed themselves to rest. Gradually, the conversation wandered. Childhood streets, favorite meals, the books Amelia used to read before nights became too tired for pages.
Rowan listened more than he spoke.
When he did speak, it was careful, measured, as if each sentence had to earn its place. Amelia noticed how his shoulders slowly relaxed, how the lines around his eyes softened. At some point, he asked, Why logistics?
She laughed softly. It was close to home.
And I was good with numbers. You're better than good, he said without thinking. I've seen your reports. The compliment landed gently, without obligation. Amelia felt something uncoil in her chest. Snow continued to fall, layering the city in forgiveness. Hours slipped by unnoticed until a distant church bell marked midnight. Christmas, Amelia whispered. Rowan stood, drawn to the window. He looked at the lights, the sleeping child, the woman behind him who had survived more than she admitted. He felt an unfamiliar pressure behind his eyes. I used to think Christmas was inefficient, he said quietly. All that sentiment. No measurable return. Amelia joined him at the window. And now? He considered. Now I think it's an investment. In the silence that followed, something shifted. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle rebalancing. The night no longer felt like a burden to endure but a space to inhabit. Rowan reached into his coat again, then stopped, shaking his head at himself. I keep doing that, he said, pulling solutions out of pockets. Amelia smiled. Sometimes solutions are just being present. He looked at her, really looked, as if committing the moment to memory. Then I'll try that. They sat again, closer this time, the table between them crowded with ordinary objects made extraordinary by context. Somewhere below, a door closed. Somewhere far away, laughter drifted through the cold. Rowan finally stood for real, this time moving toward the door. I'll see you Monday, he said. Rest tomorrow. Both of you. We will, Amelia replied. At the threshold, he paused. Amelia? Yes. Thank you for trusting me with Santa. He left before she could answer. The room felt fuller after he was gone. Amelia checked on Elliot, adjusted the blanket, and sat by the window, watching snow soften the edges of the world. She didn't know what Monday would bring, or whether promises would hold beyond the glow of fairy lights. But for now, the address had been delivered. The window was lit. And somewhere between a boss who learned to listen and a child who believed without fear, Christmas kept going, quietly, patiently, waiting for what might come next. They stayed longer than Amelia intended, as if leaving the empty flat too soon might break the spell. Elliot explored every corner with serious dedication, declaring the small cupboard a secret station and the window ledge the control room. Amelia watched him, keys warm in her palm, feeling time loosen its grip. Eventually, the cold crept back into her bones. They locked up, promising the rooms they'd return, and walked back toward Mrs. Klein's shop. The drizzle turned to mist, the streetlights blurring into halos. Amelia's phone buzzed again, this time with a message instead of a call. Rowan, I forgot to ask, does Elliot like pancakes? She smiled before she could stop herself. Amelia, he thinks they are magic. Rowan, then I owe him some magic. Tomorrow morning? Her first instinct was caution. Life had taught her to measure hope carefully, like sugar when money was tight. But Elliot looked up at her, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes bright. Mum, he said, as if reading her hesitation, Santa helpers can have breakfast, right? She typed back before doubt could speak. Amelia, tomorrow morning is fine. Rowan, I'll come by. Not as your boss. She paused, then replied. Amelia, good. That night passed more easily than the one before. The room above the shop no longer felt like a stopgap. It felt like a bridge. Amelia tucked Elliot in, listening to the sounds of the building settling, the city breathing below them. She lay awake longer than she meant to, imagining the flat again. The way light had moved across its floor, the way Rowan's voice had sounded less guarded. Morning arrived with purpose. Elliot was up before the alarm, dressed and ready, the train tucked under his arm like a passport.
"He'll be here soon," Amelia said, trying to sound casual. A knock came almost on cue.
3 taps again, careful, familiar. Rowan stood outside with a paper bag and an apron folded over his arm, looking faintly uncomfortable and entirely sincere.
"I come prepared," he said. Mrs. Klein watched from her counter, eyes twinkling.
The kitchen was small, but Rowan moved in it with surprising ease. He cracked eggs, flipped pancakes with theatrical flair, accepted Elliot's commentary like expert advice. Amelia leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, feeling something warm and unsettling bloom in her chest.
"You're good at this," she said.
Rowan shrugged. "Practice. I learned early that if you want something done properly, you do it yourself."
Elliot giggled. "That's what Mum says." Rowan glanced at Amelia. "She's right."
They ate together, syrup sticky on fingers, laughter loosening the air. Rowan listened when Amelia spoke, really listened, asking questions that showed he remembered the answers. When Elliot spilled juice, Rowan cleaned it up without a second thought. After breakfast, Rowan stood, wiping his hands. "I should go," he said, though there was reluctance in it. "But, would you like to see the flat again this afternoon? There's someone who wants to meet you."
Amelia's stomach fluttered. "Who?"
"The property manager," he said simply.
"And the school nearby?"
"They are accepting transfers."
Her breath caught.
"That's a lot." "It can wait," Rowan said quickly. "All of it can wait. I just wanted you to know the door is open." She nodded, grateful for the space. "This afternoon is fine." Rowan left, and the room felt quieter but not empty. Elliot played with his train, humming. Amelia cleaned up slowly, thoughts tumbling over each other.
She wasn't naive.
She knew kindness could come with complications.
But she also knew when something felt different.
In the afternoon, they returned to the flat. The property manager was kind, efficient, spoke directly to Amelia, not around her. The school secretary smiled at Elliot, showed him pictures of classrooms, mentioned a library with beanbags. Elliot listened wide-eyed, absorbing a future he hadn't dared imagine. Rowan stayed slightly back, hands in his pockets, letting Amelia lead. When she asked questions, he didn't answer for her. When decisions hovered, he waited. Afterward, as they stood in the empty living room again, Amelia turned to him.
"Why?" she asked quietly.
Rowan met her gaze. "Because I spent a long time believing I could control outcomes by limiting variables. And then a boy asked me to tell Santa where he lived." She smiled, tears threatening. "That's not a business strategy."
"No," he said.
"It's a correction." They stood there, sunlight shifting, the city humming beyond the walls. Elliot ran past them, laughing, the train clattering along the floor. Rowan cleared his throat. "I don't know what this becomes," he said.
"And I won't pretend otherwise. But I'd like to find out. Slowly. Properly." Amelia nodded.
"So would I." Outside, evening crept closer, patient and unassuming. The flat waited. The keys waited. And somewhere between caution and courage, a life was quietly rearranging itself, not rushing, not concluding, just continuing, one careful step at a time. The first night they slept in the new flat, the city sounded different. Not quieter, just kinder. Amelia lay awake on a mattress on the floor, listening to Elliot breathe from the next room, the steady rhythm of a child who finally felt safe enough to rest deeply. Moonlight spilled across bare walls, turning emptiness into promise. She thought of all the nights she'd counted coins at the kitchen table, all the prayers she'd whispered into silence. None of them had sounded like miracles. They'd sounded like survival. And yet here she was, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, holding keys that were truly hers. Elliot padded into her room just before dawn, dragging his wooden train behind him. "Mum," he whispered, as if afraid to wake the walls, "Santa did really good this year."
Amelia smiled, pulling him close.
He had help. The days that followed unfolded gently, without spectacle. Furniture arrived slowly, second-hand but solid.
Mrs. Klein sent curtains.
Rowan sent nothing, but he came often. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes just with time. He learned Elliot's routines, his fears, the way he needed stories told twice. Amelia learned that Rowan drank his tea too strong and hated wasting food because waste felt like disrespect to a past he rarely spoke of. Work changed too. Rowan didn't become a saint overnight. He was still precise, still demanding.
But policies shifted.
Overtime became optional, childcare flexible.
People noticed. They didn't call it kindness. They called it leadership.
One evening, as snow threatened again, Rowan stood by the window of the flat, watching Elliot do homework at the table.
"I never thought I'd want this," he said quietly. "Noise. Mess.
Someone asking me why the sky is gray."
Amelia looked at him.
And now I think I was just afraid of wanting it." Silence settled, not awkward, not heavy.
Earned.
Weeks passed. Christmas decorations came down, but the warmth didn't leave with them. Elliot started school. On his first day, he squeezed Rowan's hand at the gate without thinking, then looked up, startled by his own instinct. Rowan squeezed back. On a cold January night, long after Elliot had fallen asleep, Rowan stood in the living room, turning something small in his hands. Amelia watched him from the sofa, sensing the weight of what was coming.
"I don't want to rush you," he said. "Or him.
Or this."
He inhaled. "But I know regret. I've lived with it.
And I don't want to miss the chance to be present."
He held out a small silver bell, worn smooth. "I found this years ago. It belonged to my mother."
She said bells were reminders that some things are only heard if you're listening.
Amelia's throat tightened.
"What are you asking?" Rowan met her eyes, steady and unguarded.
"To keep listening.
Together." She stood, resting her forehead against his. "I already am." Spring crept in, unannounced but undeniable.
Windows opened.
Laughter spilled onto the street. Elliot's train tracks grew more elaborate, looping through every room, connecting spaces the way he connected people, without permission, without fear. One afternoon, as Amelia watched Rowan help Elliot build a cardboard city on the living room floor, she realized something had shifted permanently. Not because of the flat, or the job, or the safety, but because she no longer felt like she had to earn her place in the world. That summer, they walked past the old warehouse. Elliot pointed at the office window. "That's where I told Santa," he said proudly. Rowan smiled. "You did." "And he listened," Elliot added.
"Yes," Rowan said, voice soft.
"He did." They didn't correct him.
Some truths don't need refining.
Years later, on another Christmas night, the flat glowed with light and noise and life. Friends filled the rooms.
Mrs. Klein sat in the best chair. The table bowed under food and laughter.
Outside, snow began to fall again, just like before. Elliot, taller now, hung a bell by the window. "So Santa knows," he said, grinning.
Amelia caught Rowan's eye across the room.
He smiled back, not the careful smile of a man counting costs, but the easy one of a man who finally understood value. The bell chimed softly as the window opened, letting cold air mix with warmth.
Somewhere in the city, addresses changed. Lives shifted.
And on one quiet street, a light stayed on, not because anyone was afraid of the dark, but because love had learned where to find them.